Hello all and welcome to Chalk Talk, your source for Ohio State varsity athletics, news, updates, and analysis. I'm your host, Kaylee Rentz, coming to you from the Lantern TV studios in Columbus, Ohio. I'm joined by resident Buckeye sports analyst, senior Lantern reporter Andrew Todd Smith, and Lantern TV assistant sports director Aaron Urian. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was a busy weekend for the Buckeyes with men's soccer, women's volleyball, women's golf, and men's golf all competing. We have the latest on all those games, but first let's take a look at the Ohio State football team and how they fared in their game against the Virginia Tech Hokies. The Buckeyes took on the Hokies at home in a 35-21 loss. Even with the valiant effort from sophomore defensive end Joey Bosa, the Buckeyes were unable to come up with the victory. Gentlemen, what's your take on Saturday's game?
The tail of the tape was in three different areas from Ohio State. Third down conversions, turnovers, and costly penalties at the most inopportune time.
I completely agree, Aaron. The Buckeyes struggled on third down. They went 2 of 8 against Navy, went 4 of 16 against Virginia Tech. So that's going to be a talking point moving forward. This team needs to get more efficient, and we'll talk about how that led to the need for special teams plays where they were unable to come up big. So turnovers, JT Barrett, he threw 3 interceptions. You're not going to win these big ball games under the lights if you're giving the ball away to the other team. But he needs more protection from his O-line. We'll talk about that. And those costly penalties. I mean, you've got a personal foul from Ron Tanner. Yep. You've got a costly drive extending pass interference call on Eli Apple. But again, miscues, mental errors. What do you think they're going to have to do this weekend to rebound against Kent State?
Well, on the rebound, the most important thing, you said it, was third down conversions, but also drop passes. Inside the red zone, JT Barrett tried to hook up with Corey Smith in the end zone, hits him right in the hands, and he drops the ball. That sets up a 4th down scenario inside the red zone, and Nurnberger comes in. He actually hits the left upright, and it bounces out. I mean, good on Ohio State for going into the second half down 21-7 and then able to tie it up in the beginning of the fourth quarter, but if you're having trouble with a young passer, if you have trouble with the offensive line providing protection, you have to be able to catch the passes that are thrown at you. It goes without saying.
Right. And another thing that I at least took away from this game is they didn't utilize their H-backs. I mean, that was a great takeaway from the Navy game, is that they were getting dynamic on offense and inventive, and they targeted Jalen Marshall once. He didn't have any receptions. That's a talent that you're not utilizing. So it becomes, I'm sure, frustrating for Buckeye fans to see all this talent on their depth chart, and they're not putting it to use. They're using the tight end as a blocker and no longer as a receiver. So if they're going to move forward and try to open up this offense and take the pressure off of JT Barrett, they're going to need to utilize the skill position players. So we talked about Jalen Marshall. Curtis Samuel didn't really do a whole lot either. JT Barrett was the team's leading rusher. What is wrong with that picture? When JT Barrett is known for being a pocket passer and he's the team's leading rusher, he rushed for 125 yards. 55 of those were negated because of the 7 sacks. So let's talk about the O-line. What are they doing wrong? Are they improving? Are they regressing? What's the deal?
Well, it's kind of an unfair assessment to judge the offensive line and their capacity based on the Virginia Tech game alone. Virginia Tech came into the game with nothing to lose and everything to prove when they came to Ohio Stadium on Saturday. And quite honestly, they stacked the box with defenders. That was a game where normally the philosophy is the run game opens up the passing game. You rush until they stop the rush and the safeties come up in the run defense, and then you throw the ball to an open receiver. This was a classic case where they have nine defenders between the tackles. The corners came up on man press coverage. They locked down the wide receivers, and the safeties just came up to cover the H-back, to cover the running back out of the backfield. So reality, the only person that was left sort of open was JT Barrett to run the ball, and he had a couple of really great runs. But at the end of the day, if you're a 5-man line with maybe a tight end to help out with blocking, you're not going to be able to defend nine players run blitzing. The passing game isn't there, and the running game you can't establish.
And we said last week that Virginia Tech, they weren't going to be intimidated, and they were prepared. aside from one play that we noticed where Michael Brewer was calling for the ball and couldn't hear the snap count, or the center couldn't hear him, other than that, they were pretty unfazed by the environment in the shoe. Sellout crowd, you had LeBron James in attendance, all this hype, primetime matchup. Virginia Tech came to play. Let's talk about the defense and what they did right. So there were a few missed tackles here and there, but by and large, the defense kind of kept them in this game. As you mentioned, Kaylee, in your intro, Joey Bosa had a big game. He's a monster coming off the end. But he can't do it all himself. Now, one thing that is worth mentioning going into this Kent State matchup is they increased their depth once more with the return of Noah Spence. So we talked to some of the players at Wednesday's Media Day scrum, and they had this to say about getting Noah Spence back.
Yeah, I think what Noah gives us is a lot more depth at defensive end. So now Joey can get more of a rest, and we can just start moving guys in and out, because Joey played an absurd number of plays on Saturday. So getting him to play at a higher level for all those plays will be a lot better than having him dog-tired in the fourth quarter. So I think having him back just really adds the whole, we got 8 men ready to rotate, and that's going to help us a ton.
Urban, how do you guys plan to work Noah back into things now that he's off the suspension and everything?
Oh, that's to be determined, and see how he responds to everything.
So as you just heard, Noah Spence coming back in the lineup. May not be a starter. I believe Steve Miller was named to be the starter this Saturday against Kent State. But it allows there to be some depth in the defensive end position where you can rotate through Joey Bosa, Noah Spence, and Steve Miller, even though Bosa had this wonderful forced fumble which set up a Ezekiel Elliott 15-yard touchdown run 2 plays later. But another position on the team, on the defense, which has a lot of added depth, is the linebacker position. What do you have on them, Andrew?
The linebackers absolutely are carrying this team. So Darren Lee, Captain Curtis Grant, and Joshua Perry, they were the leading 3 tacklers from this game. Between Von Bell and Eli Apple in the secondary coming up with interceptions, that's great. But in terms of stopping the run, pressuring Michael Brewer, and they're going to have to do the same thing against Colin Reardon from Kent State on Saturday, the linebackers are doing a great job of backing up the depth and talent on the line. So we talked about the interceptions. It was great to see Von Bell perform well for the Buckeyes. It was also good to see Raekwon McMillan get his first action in a scarlet and gray uniform. So the true freshman, he showed up early, and it was good to see him. Again, we're talking depth on the D-line, but all of a sudden the linebackers have depth too. Moving on to special teams, they really struggled. You mentioned Nurnberger with the wide left. He had the deflection on the 27-yard attempt. Again, if they're coming up with big plays on 3rd down to convert, they shouldn't be needing to rely on Nurnberger to get them points. But it's definitely going to be a learning experience as he plays in front of these big crowds moving forward. Cameron Johnston uncharacteristically shanked the punt earlier in the game, so I'm sure he's been beating himself up about that. We talked about Kyle Clinton. Coach Urban Meyer had this to say about the penalties just in general.
How much of a talking point was discipline with the Eli Apple pass interference penalty and the personal foul on kick coverage? Just evaluating that moving forward.
Those are the team knows that. We've covered that weekly, and then I grabbed both of those, and we had a little chat, and it was, those are effort plays, and you just got to avoid that, especially in those kind of situations. And the kick out of bounds is a bad one too in the fourth quarter.
Okay, so now that you guys have analyzed the Virginia Tech game, what can we look forward to from the Buckeyes in the Kent State game this Saturday?
Yeah, we already talked about quarterback Colin Reardon. He's going to be a playmaker for the Golden Flashes. He decommitted from Miami of Ohio. So far this season, he's passing with 58% completion. He has 4 passing touchdowns and a pick to his credit. But the real storyline here comes into play when you consider that second-year head coach Paul Haynes of Kent State alum, but he has experience coaching this Ohio State team. He was the defensive backs coach at Ohio State from 2005 to 2010 under Jim Tressel, and he was also the co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach under Luke Fickell. So this guy is no stranger to the horseshoe. As Urban Meyer intimated on Wednesday, he's going to have this team ready. It's their chance to perform in front of 110,000 people. So Kent State, they're 0-2. They've had a rough start to the season. They lost to Ohio University 17-14, and they lost to South Alabama, recent FBS edition, 23-13. So they're struggling, but they're a solid MAC team. So they're going to come ready. He has 10.15 yards per catch. Now, that's a weird statistic because that doesn't mean the passes he's attempting, but when he does complete the passes, they're going to be over the middle. They're going to be in the flat. They're going to be productive plays. So, Aaron, what do you think of the secondary basically needing to respond and rebound and be resilient after Brewer was able to complete passes on them in the Virginia Tech game? What do you think is going to happen?
Kent State doesn't necessarily have the talent that the other teams have, like Virginia Tech or even some of the Big Ten teams that Ohio State's going to end up playing. We're actually going to see a more traditional offense throwing the ball against the secondary. Against Virginia Tech, you saw a lot more of the option plays and passes, and with Navy, of course, it's the vaunted triple option attack from the midshipmen. But with Kent State, I think due to the talent gap between Ohio State and the Golden Flashes, I think the safeties and the corners, they're going to have an actual, like a confidence builder almost going into the bye week and then Cincinnati.
Yeah, and another thing to note is that they struggle in red zone defense. So in 3 trips by opponents of Kent State into the red zone, they've scored every time. The players to watch for, in my opinion, are going to be the Holly brothers. You have sophomore safety Nate Holly on defense, obviously, and then his brother is the running back. He's a converted wide receiver, so the twins are very productive for the Golden Flashes. 2 forced fumbles by the safety, 1 pass breakup, and 16 solo tackles and 11 assisted. So this guy is leading their defense, and on the other side of the ball, his brother, we watched tape of him, Aaron. He is fast. Number 4, again, converted wide receiver, so I mean, he already has the speed and the build for it, but he's going to be an option for Colin Reardon to turn to if, as you said, the safeties and the cornerbacks for Ohio State begin to shut down his attack. So he has a weapon in the backfield that they're probably going to need to rely on. He doesn't have any rushing touchdowns so far, but another key player to watch for is wide receiver Ernest Calhoun. He's Reardon's favorite target, 14 catches and 119 yards so far this season. So we've covered playmakers, offense, defense, special teams. What do we have to look forward to?
Well, when it comes to special teams for the Golden Flashes, there are 2 players that stand out in my mind. Anthony Melchiori, who is a place kicker as well as their punter, and is on the Ray Guy Award watch list, the exact same post-game or postseason award that Cam Johnston for Ohio State is also up for. But so far, when it comes to kicking, he's 0-2 on the season. The other player to look for is number 91, the redshirt junior April Goss. She's a 5'6", 134-pound player and was a former soccer player who walked onto the team. She's pound for pound, according to their website, she's pound for pound America's toughest athlete. But I mean, she right now is the backup kicker and hasn't attempted an extra point or a field goal in Division I football play. It would be interesting to see if they put her in just for the historic value. I think it'll be very interesting to see if they try to imitate what Virginia Tech did last week under the lights and with that whole cover 0 type defense.
So with all that in mind, what are you guys' predictions for the game this Saturday?
Should I go first?
Well, no, I guess I forced you to go first last time, and we were both way, way off.
Well, yeah, first of all, we both had Ohio State winning, which was clearly erroneous, in fact. But yeah, in terms of what to expect from, I mean, Kent State has the game plan. They've got it laid out for them, like we just said. If they replicate, they don't have the talent that Virginia Tech does, especially on defense. But if they're able to challenge and stymie the Ohio State attack, they could be in this game. As you said, they have nothing to lose. Numerically, what do you think is going to happen?
28-17.
Ooh, Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Okay. I do think, as you thought would happen last week, I think the offense that they were sort of thriving in that Navy game, I think they get back on track, start utilizing their wide receivers, no drops. I'm going 35 to, let's go 17. 35 to 17.
Copying off me. It's copying off me, folks.
So I think we have some interesting and well-substantiated predictions, but I'm sure we may very well be proven wrong again this week as well.
I hope not. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for football this week. Kaylee, what kind of things did we see from soccer over the weekend?
Well, the women's soccer team had a successful weekend, squaring off against Dayton University and George Mason. The Buckeyes beat the Flyers 4-2 on Friday, and they beat the Patriots in a shutout 3-0 on Sunday.
So what kind of players did you notice in both those games over the weekend?
Well, definitely there was a huge game by freshman forward Sammy Edwards. She actually had a hat trick, which we haven't seen since last year, by Nichelle Prince. Also, I think that Sydney Dudley, she scored in that game, so she definitely stood out. She was a part of the game the entire time. Now, looking at George Mason, that game was awesome. It was great to see the Buckeyes really going through just tough, like, grind, hard work. It was great. And Taylor Schisler actually really stood out during that game. She had 2 goals. And then Nikki Waltz, a girl that we talked a lot about last year because she's a freshman. She has come in at the midfield position, and she's new to the game, and she's been so huge for the Buckeyes. She has the most assists for the Buckeyes so far, and she scored. So that was great for them. So women's soccer, they came out strong. They did phenomenal this weekend.
It's good to see Nikki Waltz really, as you said last week, that she was going to have to step up because she's young, she's learning the scheme, new to Walker's system, and so we talked about the youth, but still the fact that the defense is their strongest unit. So it's good to see that from the Lady Buckeyes.
Definitely. And I mean, the Buckeyes in the Dayton game, they came out really strong. Like, it was just they scored within the first 2 minutes of the game, and that was Sammy Edwards who came in and scored. And, she's someone that's coming in. She's like the new Nichelle Prince of this season, which is pretty rare to see a player like Nichelle Prince basically emulated in a freshman forward. In the George Mason game, they came out really flat and slow, and that was something that I wasn't expecting. Their goals happened in the second half. It wasn't as consistent as the Dayton game was, but in Dayton, they lost possession majority of the game. So it's something where, these girls, they have the tenacity, they have the ability to be just this cutthroat, big Ten team that I know they can be, especially with Lori Walker as coach. I mean, she's a phenomenal coach and has led these girls to some great seasons. But, I was kind of disappointed in the George Mason game, but overall really happy that they've been so successful so far.
And when will the Lady Buckeyes be squaring off again in Big Ten play?
They're actually squaring off this weekend in Big Ten play. They're going to be away. They're going to be in Indiana playing Indiana and Purdue. So they have a big weekend this weekend. So hopefully hoping for good games from those girls. The men's soccer team faced off in Wilmington, North Carolina against UNC Wilmington and Elon University. On Friday, the Buckeyes faced the Seahawks in a 1-1 tie in double overtime. But on Sunday, the Buckeyes were victorious with a 1-0 win against the Phoenix. Senior midfielder Yanni Saris scored for the Buckeyes in the early moments of the contest from forward Danny Jensen, a guy who I think has just stepped up so well this season. Now, looking at the Elon University game, there's actually a junior forward and Big Ten co-offensive player of the week, Joao Ehlers, scored in the 92nd minute of play to lead the Buckeyes to their victory in that game.
They rebounded very capably from the red card drama against Butler. Coach John Bloom presumably didn't have anything to throw his hat about this week. But as you said, Kaylee, strong performances from them, and we'll have to see how their season progresses as the Big Ten conference slate goes on. So now that we've recapped football and men's and women's soccer, Aaron, what do you have for us from the women's volleyball front?
Well, it was the Eagles, Tigers, and Salukis, oh my, at St. John Arena. But in the end, it was the Buckeyes who took the title at the 9th Annual Sports Imports DC Cole Classic. So we teased it a little bit last week. Florida Gulf Coast comes in with senior setter Gigi Meyer. And on Friday night, Coach Urban Meyer and his entire family were there to show his support. On day one, Ohio State ended up sweeping Auburn and then went down 1 set against both Florida Gulf Coast and Southern Illinois to open, but ended up rallying back to win in 3 straight sets.
They had a very dominant performance in this tournament. Middle blocker, sophomore, Taylor Sandbothy was named Big Ten Co-Defensive Player of the Week. She had 34 kills, so she continues to be a force for the Lady Buckeyes. Also honored was junior outside hitter Elizabeth Campbell as being named to the all-tournament team. Freshman outside hitter Louisa Shermer, however, was named the tournament's most outstanding player. So, beyond these awards being given to Buckeye players, who else stood out to you in terms of being a go-to player that produced over the weekend?
Well, Andrew, besides those 3 players, to me, I give my nod to senior outside hitter Erin Seckinger. She's the hometown girl from here in Columbus, Ohio. She went to Bishop Reedy High School. And the reason I say this is one word: serving. It was a weak area from the preseason. Coach Carlston and a couple of the players that I've interviewed following the Scarlet and Gray game and following a couple of the first home games said that serving was a rough area that they needed to improve in. But over the weekend, she had 11 serves against Auburn with only 2 errors. She had 8 serves against Florida Gulf Coast and was extremely perfect in that game. And then Southern Illinois, she had a whopping 17 serves to end the tournament.
So after looking at women's volleyball, let's take a look at women's field hockey. Andrew, can you give us a little update on the field hockey team?
Yes, the women's field hockey team, they had their first win of the season. It was a 3-2 victory over in-state rival Miami University, the Red Hawks. And yeah, it was good to see the ladies get back on track with a win after a shaky start.
So this field hockey team is such a young team. Andrew, who actually stood out in the last game?
Sure. Yeah, you had 2 goals and an assist put in by freshman forward Maddie Humphrey. We had senior defender Emma Royce. You mentioned youth, but Emma Royce came up big. She was, among sort of the preseason talk in terms of players to watch out for. But the freshman goalkeeper, story of this team, Liz Tamburo, has been called upon to contribute, and she is killing it. In the game, she made all 10 of her saves after the intermission, and she has taken the reins of this defense. But yeah, moving forward, the offense, they have great chemistry, but it's going to be important that they communicate better on defense with Tamburo leading that charge. So they will be taking on Ohio University, similar to the women's volleyball team. Well, the Lady Buckeyes of field hockey will be taking on Ohio University next in Athens, 7 p.m. tonight. So we wish the Lady Buckeyes the best.
Well, in other varsity sporting news around campus, golf season has started. Andrew and Kaylee, could you go ahead and preview the men's and women's team?
Well, this weekend, the men's golf team went 3rd at the Northern Collegiate Tournament, hosted in Sugar Grove, Illinois, but they were actually hosted by Northern Illinois University. Now, senior Boo Timko led with 9 birdies, registering a score of 67, and finished 4th individually. Now, Andrew, looking into women's golf, how did they play this weekend at the Chippewa Cup Invitational?
Yes, as you said, Kaylee, the Chippewa Club Invitational in Lincoln, Nebraska, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, of course, hosting. The Ohio State Buckeyes ladies golf team came up victorious. So medically redshirted freshman Rio Watanabe, a Japanese student, in her first game in the Scarlet and Gray, able to win the entire tournament. So she had back-to-back rounds of 74, and the 3rd round, so the women played 2 sets of 18 holes of golf on Monday, and then wrapped up with a 3rd set of 18 holes on Tuesday, which was delayed by 90 minutes, but the Buckeyes would not be deterred. On the strong performance from Watanabe, after the lightning delay, Chan Chanpalangsri of Thailand came in 2nd for the Buckeyes, and tied for 8th was Jessica Horvasnik, and tied for 10th was Claudia Lim. So Therese Hession's squad coming up big in Lincoln, but Kaylee, where will they be competing next?
Well, the Lady Buckeyes will actually be traveling to Ann Arbor, Michigan, that team up north, and they will be playing in the Big Ten East and West match play. So looking forward to seeing some great things come from the Lady Buckeyes there. Now this week we actually had something really cool happen in women's ice hockey news. Aaron, can you tell us a little bit about what happened with the women's ice hockey team?
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. Aaron Kemp, who's actually the new commissioner for the Women's Collegiate Hockey Association, which is the division that Ohio State plays in, has been named the new commissioner, so he's doing a campus tour to all the member schools. Well, on Wednesday, he was here at Ohio State, and I was in attendance at the press conference, and here's what him and Coach Nate Handeran had to say.
If the second half of last year was any indication, I'm pretty excited about the group as we come back. Certainly we have to be prepared to play a pretty consistent game throughout the entire season, just because of the quality of competition we have in our conference.
We've got a good tradition of excellence, and I don't want to do too much to change that. A lot of that is to the compliments of the member institutions and great coaches. So I think from that standpoint, not a lot is going to change. From a WCHA perspective, we're making some changes internally to help with our public relations and to help promote what we're doing, both past and present. And I think we're going to really put a focus on social media and trying to increase attendance at our championship at the final face-off.
So it'll be interesting to see what kind of changes he makes this season as the new commissioner for the WCHA. But unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today, folks. Be sure to catch BNN Update on Mondays and Sports Perspective on Tuesdays for all your latest Buckeye athletic news.
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ChalkTalkOSU. Please join us in the conversation using the hashtag CTOSU, and we'll have plenty of Buckeye sports updates again for you next week.
I'm Kaylee Rentz for Andrew Todd Smith and Aaron Yarian. Thank you and goodbye.